Sis, before you scroll past this one, sit all the way down, lock the door, cut the lights low, because what I am about to lay out in front of you tonight is going to rearrange every single thing you thought you knew about Papoose, about Remy Ma, and about that little girl Clarissa who keeps opening her mouth on camera like she is not walking herself straight into a courtroom deposition with every breath she takes. I am not exaggerating for the algorithm. I am not being dramatic for clicks. I am not fishing for a viral moment. What has come crawling out of the shadows in the last 72 hours is so wild, so foul, so cinematic, so unbelievably ugly, that when I first started piecing it together I had to put my phone face down on the counter, walk to the kitchen, pour myself something cold, and take a full 3 minutes just to breathe before I could even open this microphone. Because if even half of what these insiders are whispering behind closed doors turns out to be true, then Papoose is not just a fraudulent husband. Papoose is not just a rapper who has been coasting on his wife's name for 2 decades. Papoose is a man who allegedly weaponized his own wife's freedom, watched her rot behind concrete walls for 6 long years of her one and only life, and had the audacity to walk into every single interview holding her hand while the receipts were burning a hole in his pocket the entire time. Are you ready? Because tonight I am not sugarcoating a single syllable, and by the time this video ends, the whole culture is going to look different to you. Pull up a seat, Hush House family. Grab your drink, silence your notifications, kick your shoes off, because we drag out the truth that the industry buries, we chase down the whispers that nobody else has the stomach to repeat, and we hand you the receipts with our chest all the way out. Nothing is sacred in this house. Nobody gets a free pass. And tonight, the pass we are burning belongs to a man who has spent 20 years hiding behind his wife's shadow while loudly telling the world he is the last savior hip-hop has left. Let's cut clean into this one, because the story is heavier than any of us were prepared for. I want to start with the Clarissa interview, because I know some of you are still catching up on the timeline, and I need every single person in this room on the exact same page before we get to the part that made me gasp out loud in my own kitchen. Clarissa sat down across from Cam Newton, a whole-grown professional athlete, a father, a man who has interviewed some of the sharpest minds walking the earth, and she looked Cam Newton dead in his face and told that man, on camera, on the record, forever, that she did not know who Papoose was. Not that she was not familiar with his catalog. Not that she wasn't a hardcore hip-hop head. She said, out loud, that she did not even know Papoose was a rapper. She said she did not seek Papoose out. She said she stumbled into this entire situation like a woman who accidentally climbed into the wrong Uber. Sis, quit the fairy tale. Because if Clarissa did not know who Papoose was, then Papoose has spent the last 2 decades screaming into an empty room, and every single crown he has claimed to wear is made of tin foil, dollar store glue, and pure delusion. By this stage of the story, you should already be seeing the trap that Clarissa walked herself into, because she thought she was protecting herself. She thought she was cleverly saying, look, I did not chase Papoose, Papoose chased me, I am the innocent one in this entire scenario, do not put me in the same category as those other women. But what Clarissa actually did was hand the entire internet the receipts on Papoose's relevance. Clarissa made her own man look microscopic. And that is the thing about Clarissa that keeps showing up in every single interview, every single live stream, every single social media appearance she has ever made. She thinks she is scoring points. She thinks she is winning the argument. She thinks she is protecting her image and her boyfriend's brand. But every single time Clarissa opens her mouth, she leaves another dent in the man she is supposed to be defending. It is like watching somebody try to bail water out of a sinking boat with a plastic fork. Are you honestly asking me to believe that Clarissa scrolled through Remy Ma's page, admired Remy Ma's fashion, admired Remy Ma's hair, admired Remy Ma's nails, admired Remy Ma's whole entire aesthetic, and somehow completely missed the 6-foot-tall, full-bearded, unmistakable man standing right next to Remy Ma in every single photograph? The same exact man Clarissa later called fine on camera. The same exact man Clarissa later described as the reason she supposedly could not resist. You cannot have it both ways. Either Clarissa knew exactly who Papoose was and pursued a married man on purpose, or she did not know who Papoose was and her own boyfriend is a ghost in his own industry. Pick a lane, sis. Because both of these lanes end with Clarissa looking terrible and Papoose looking 1,000 times worse. And Cam Newton, God bless that man, because Cam Newton was sitting across from Clarissa doing the exact thing every single one of us was doing at home. Cam Newton was blinking slowly. Cam Newton was tilting his head sideways. Cam Newton was pausing mid-question. Cam Newton was doing that look that grown men do when they realize the woman in front of them is not fully connected to the same reality they are living in. You riding with me on this? Stay locked. Because that look on Cam Newton's face during that entire interview told you everything the audio would not say. Cam Newton was watching a woman lie in real time, and Cam Newton was giving Clarissa every single chance in the world to correct course, and Clarissa just kept driving straight into the wall like the brake pedal was optional. Now let me tell you something that has been quietly circulating in the corners of the internet where the real ones live, the corners where the receipts get uploaded before they get scrubbed by publicists, the corners where somebody's cousin's best friend's neighbor knows somebody who was actually there. There is a woman by the name of Topaz Stanton, and if you have not heard the name Topaz Stanton yet, I need you to write it down on the nearest piece of paper, because Topaz Stanton is the domino that everything else in this Papoose situation falls off of. Because for months now, maybe even longer, the whisper on every block that matters has been that Papoose was not just entertaining Clarissa on the side. Papoose was allegedly running an entire parallel operation with Topaz Stanton, and depending on which insider you talk to on which day of the week, that operation with Topaz may have produced consequences that no amount of pillow talk redirection can ever bury. A woman named Shay Cartier came forward with a statement that I have been turning over in my head for days now, because it lines up almost perfectly with things I have personally been hearing since I was a young girl growing up in a neighborhood that ran on rumors, receipts, and long memories. Shay claims, and I want to be crystal clear that this is her account and not confirmed courtroom fact, that Remy Ma was married to Papoose the exact moment Remy Ma got locked up. Not a full year before. Not during some distant courtship. Right at the door of the correctional facility. Which raises a question that nobody in the mainstream media is asking loud enough. Why the rush? What was the paperwork actually protecting? Was that ring a symbol of undying love, or was that ring a signature on a document that opened financial and legal doors nobody outside that marriage was ever supposed to walk through? Because think about it with me for a minute. When a woman goes into the system with real money, the people around that woman do not always circle her out of loyalty. Sometimes those people circle her out of proximity to that money. And when there is no ring, there is no legal grip on any of those accounts. But when there is a ring, when there is a marriage certificate, when there is a legal title, suddenly the man on the outside has keys to doors he never had keys to before that ceremony. I am not saying with certainty that is exactly what happened between Papoose and Remy Ma. I am asking why the timing lines up so cleanly. Because if the marriage happened before Remy Ma was even fully sentenced, then somebody was very interested in becoming the emergency contact at the exact same moment her emergency was beginning. Shay Cartier's account goes even further, and this is where the story stops being a quiet rumor and starts becoming a full-blown indictment. According to Shay Cartier, Remy Ma did not go to prison because of some random street beef. Remy Ma did not go to prison because of a spontaneous act of unexplained anger. Remy Ma allegedly went to prison because she caught Papoose in a bed that was not supposed to have anybody else in it, with a woman who was not supposed to be there, and what happened in the seconds after that discovery is what put Remy Ma behind concrete walls for 6 years of her one precious life. That is not a punchline. That is not a bar. That is a woman losing 6 years of her freedom because a man could not keep his hands to himself, and then that same man allegedly stood next to her at every single parole hearing performing the role of the devoted husband while the truth was sitting in his throat like a stone that never dissolved. You riding with me on this? Because I need you to understand the exact weight of what I am putting in front of you right now. 6 years. 6 birthdays behind a piece of glass. 6 Thanksgivings on a metal tray. 6 Christmases where the closest thing to a hug was a 15-minute phone call with a countdown timer ticking down in the background. And the entire time, according to the whispers that keep getting louder, Papoose was allegedly running around free, spending money he did not earn, giving interviews about how much he missed his wife, while the real reason his wife was gone was hanging invisibly on Papoose's own hands. If that story is true, and I want to keep saying if because we cannot confirm every last syllable, but if that story is true, then Papoose is not a rapper. Papoose is a con artist with a decent microphone. Shay Cartier went on to describe what allegedly happened in that room, and the details are ugly. The details are the exact kind of ugly that people usually keep buried in family group texts and never let out into the open air of the internet. Shay Cartier says the woman in the room tried to run. Shay Cartier says Papoose grabbed her arm. Shay Cartier says shots were fired inside that room. Shay Cartier says the woman who caught the bullet was then threatened into permanent silence, and Shay Cartier says that threat did not arrive with a weapon in a bag. That threat arrived with a specific dollar amount. A payoff. A hush deal. And that hush deal, according to Shea Cartier, is the exact reason certain people in the industry cannot legally or safely speak on the situation to this very day, even though every single one of those people knows exactly what happened inside that room. Now here is where I want to slow all the way down and be very careful, because I am not personally accusing anybody of anything I cannot personally prove in a court of public opinion. What I am doing is repeating what an insider has publicly stated on the record, and lining what she set up against what all of us can see with our own two eyes. And what we can see is a pattern. Papoose has allegedly been quietly connected to multiple women over the years. Papoose has allegedly kept those situations extremely quiet. Papoose has allegedly moved through the culture with a smoothness that only a certain type of money can buy. And Papoose has allegedly always chosen women who needed something. Not women who could compete with him on the platform level. Not women who had their own bags and their own microphones. Women who could be paid to disappear. Women whose silence had a price tag that fit comfortably inside his budget. That is a pattern, not a coincidence. That is a system, not a slip-up. Almost every single time this exact kind of story surfaces in the culture, the wife is expected to play the cleanup crew. The wife is expected to smooth it all over on the podcast. The wife is expected to laugh it off in the joint interview. The wife is expected to swallow the public humiliation and put on the bravest face possible for the sake of the brand. And Remy Ma, God love her, has been quietly playing that thankless role for years now. Watch any interview from the peak of the Remy Ma and Papoose marriage and you will see it happen right in front of you. Remy Ma answers the hard questions. Remy Ma takes the direct hits. Remy Ma delivers the punchlines that make Papoose look like a soft, sensitive, misunderstood king of the culture. And Papoose sits next to Remy Ma doing that little swallow he does whenever a topic gets a little too close to the flame. You know exactly the swallow I mean. That little Adam's apple bounce. That little glance to the left. That little half-smile that never quite reaches Papoose's eyes because the eyes always know what the mouth is trying to hide. Watch Papoose closely in every clip you can pull up. Because the body does not know how to lie the same way the mouth does. The mouth can be trained by a media coach. The mouth can be rehearsed for hours. The mouth can be handed a script and coached by a publicist until it delivers the line perfectly. But the throat, the eyes, the hands, the tiny involuntary muscles around the jaw, those parts of a man will always tell on him whether he wants them to or not. And Papoose has been telling on himself for years and years. The rest of us just were not paying close enough attention to notice. Now let me pivot to the part of this whole story that I personally cannot let go of, and I need you to sit with this one for a minute. Papoose has spent his entire public life presenting himself to the culture as a top-tier lyricist of historic weight. Papoose has claimed the throne. Papoose has claimed the crown. Papoose has claimed the entire mantle of hip-hop's supposed savior. Papoose has stood on stages and told anybody who would listen that he is the best rapper that ever did it, alive or dead. And yet, when Papoose's wife was locked up and needed real, tangible, life-changing support, the man who allegedly stepped up in the most concrete legal way was not Papoose. It was 50 Cent. It was Curtis Jackson. It was the same exact 50 Cent that Papoose supposedly did not run with. The same 50 Cent who lives on the completely opposite side of the industry aisle. The same 50 Cent who could have easily said this is not my problem and kept it moving down the block. And instead, 50 Cent allegedly wrote official letters. 50 Cent allegedly signed his own name to formal court documents. 50 Cent allegedly told the parole board directly that he would personally provide Remy Ma with legitimate employment upon her release. 50 Cent did what a real husband is supposed to do, while the actual legal husband sat back and let a supposed rival do all the heavy lifting for the woman he claimed to love more than anything. Let all of that marinate for a second. Because that one single fact right there tells you everything you need to know about the difference between talking loud and actually showing up when it counts. Papoose talks endlessly about being a real one. 50 Cent quietly acted like a real one. And Remy Ma said it herself in the interview, that when she really thought about it, when she really counted up the moments in her life that mattered, one of the loudest names Remy Ma had to publicly thank for her freedom was a man who was technically her rival's rival. That is not just embarrassing for Papoose on a personal level. That is a career-defining, legacy-ending indictment. Because if the woman you married cannot list you inside her top 3 saviors during her lowest possible season, then you were never the savior. You were just the mascot standing next to the real story. And this is exactly where Andre Durrell comes into the picture, and I need you to understand why this piece of the puzzle matters so much to the overall shape of the truth. Andre Durrell is not some anonymous online commentator screaming from a burner account. Andre Durrell is a legitimate trainer with real, verified credentials in the professional sports world, a man who trains actual world-class athletes for a living, a man whose voice carries actual industry weight because his name is attached to real receipts. And Andre Durrell has been publicly, openly, unmistakably, on record calling Papoose out of his own name for weeks now. Andre Durrell has not been subtweeting. Andre Durrell has not been throwing shade sideways. Andre Durrell has been standing flat-footed on the public record saying Papoose is not a real man. And when a man of Andre Durrell's stature says something like that in public, it is not because he is bored or looking for a viral moment. It is because somebody inside Andre Durrell's circle has been telling him things, and Andre Durrell has decided he is done pretending he does not know what he knows. Now I do not believe for one single second that Clarissa is sitting across from Andre Durrell strategically feeding him ammunition against her own boyfriend. I do not think Clarissa is capable of that level of long-game manipulation, and I do not mean that as a compliment. I think what is actually happening is much simpler and much sadder than a strategy. I think Clarissa opens her mouth the same exact way she opens it in every other interview she has ever done, without a filter, without a strategy, without even a basic self-preservation instinct. I think Clarissa says something offhand about her personal needs not being met. I think Clarissa complains about some specific thing Papoose has not done for her. I think Clarissa drops a small detail that a smart, observant, seasoned man like Andre Durrell picks up on immediately. And I think Andre Durrell, being the kind of man who has absolutely zero patience for a brother who is not showing up for his woman, connects the dots and starts publicly grilling Papoose for the entire industry to hear the sizzle. Because here is the truth that we do not talk about enough in this culture. Men clock other men constantly. Men see who is doing the actual work and who is just coasting on somebody else's name. Men see who is paying the actual bills and who is riding somebody else's fame straight to the bank. Men see who is genuinely protecting their woman and who is quietly using their woman as a human shield. And when a real one sees a fraud walking around in fraud clothes, a real one says something out loud. Andre Durrell said something out loud. 50 Cent said something with his actions on paper. Even Cam Newton, in the exact way he looked at Clarissa during that interview, said something loud without ever having to open his mouth to say it. The signal has been sent from every single corner of the industry, and the signal is unanimous across the board. Papoose is not the man Papoose told us he was. Boost this post right now if you are feeling what I am putting down, drop a super thanks below if the spirit moves you tonight, and sound off underneath this one with the very first thing that came to your mind when you heard the Topaz Stanton name for the first time in your entire life. Because I genuinely want to know if you were already quietly tracking this Papoose story or if this is the very first time all the dots have been connected for you in one clean place. Meet me in the replies. I read them. I remember the sharp ones. I quote the wildest ones on the next episode. So do not be shy tonight. Now let me get back to the receipts, because we are truly just getting warmed up. There is an old interview that has been circulating for years now where Remy Ma is asked directly what happened, what put her in prison, why she did what the state said she did. And inside that interview, Remy Ma does something that longtime Remy Ma watchers will immediately recognize as extremely unusual. Remy Ma rambles. Remy Ma circles. Remy Ma loses the thread of her own sentences. Remy Ma, who in every other setting on every other topic delivers her words with the precision of a machine gun, suddenly starts painting the answer in loose strokes and vague brushes. And sitting right there next to Remy Ma, doing that same little swallow he always does when a subject gets too hot to hold, is Papoose. Papoose does not look at Remy Ma. Papoose does not touch her hand for reassurance. Papoose does not reinforce a single detail. Papoose just sits there like a man watching his wife walk out onto a tightrope over a canyon, praying she does not look down at the ground below her feet. If you have ever been in a room with somebody who is actively protecting somebody else's secret, you know exactly what that looks like from the outside. It looks like a person choosing every third word with visible care. It looks like a person editing the truth in real time. It looks like a person building a version of the story that will hold up in a courtroom and out in the streets at the same time. And Remy Ma, inside that interview, was doing all of the above simultaneously. Not because Remy Ma is a liar by nature. Not because Remy Ma is a manipulator. But because Remy Ma was, in that specific moment, cleaning up somebody else's mess with the same exact hands the industry had already put in cuffs. The saddest single sentence in this entire Papoose story is not any of the sentences about Papoose himself. The saddest sentence is a quiet one that Remy Ma said in another sit-down, almost in passing, when she was asked about the marriage. Remy Ma said, and I am paraphrasing here because I do not want to misquote her exact words, but Remy Ma said something like, if the truth of what really happened in this marriage ever came out, people would cry. People would literally cry. People would break down in tears. That was not a bar for a mixtape. That was not a promotional soundbite. That was a woman who has been holding a boulder over her head for years, telling the world in the most polite possible way that the boulder is heavier than anybody watching will ever fully understand. And now, because of the interview Miss Shaikika has locked in with Remy Ma in the next couple of weeks, we may finally hear the boulder actually hit the ground. Because if Remy Ma decides she is finally ready to talk, if Remy Ma decides she is completely done being the cleanup crew, if Remy Ma decides that the woman who took 6 years for a man who was allegedly betraying her the entire time deserves at least one honest chapter of her own life, then the entire industry as we currently know it is about to shift on its axis. And Papoose knows it. That is exactly why Papoose has been quieter than usual lately. That is exactly why Papoose has been letting Clarissa do all the talking in every single interview. Because Papoose is desperately hoping that the noise around Clarissa will drown out the reckoning that is quietly coming from Remy Ma. Almost every single time a man like Papoose finds himself cornered by the truth, he does the exact same thing on schedule. He finds a new woman. He puts her out front in the spotlight. He lets her take the punches. He lets her generate the daily headlines. He lets her be the lightning rod so that the real story, the story that could actually end his career, gets buried under the daily circus of her wild behavior. And Clarissa, whether she realizes it or not on any given day, is playing that role right now with a level of enthusiasm that would honestly be impressive if it were not so tragic to watch. Every time Clarissa opens her mouth on camera, every time Clarissa posts a video to social media, every time Clarissa gets on a podcast and says something wild, she is not actually defending Papoose. She is providing Papoose with human cover. But here is the thing about human cover. Human cover only works for so long. Eventually, the wind always shifts direction. Eventually, somebody with better information gets a bigger microphone. Eventually, the woman who took the fall decides she is done taking falls for anybody else. And when that day finally comes for Remy Ma, no amount of Clarissa clowning is going to distract the culture from the fact that Papoose allegedly built his entire career, his entire brand, his entire mythology, on the back of a woman he allegedly betrayed the entire time she was inside those walls. Because if you have been paying attention to the little slip-ups Clarissa has been making across her various appearances, you already know that Clarissa's version of the timeline does not match anybody else's version of the timeline. Clarissa says one thing on Monday and something completely opposite on Friday. Clarissa claims a level of intimacy on camera that mysteriously vanishes the exact moment she is asked for a single specific verifiable detail. And Papoose, that alleged silent king of the culture, never once corrects her on record, never once co-signs her publicly, never once shows up in a photograph with her that could not have been easily staged in the lobby of any hotel. What does all of that tell you? It tells you the relationship they are performing is possibly not the relationship they are actually living behind closed doors. And it tells you that Papoose, once again, is letting a woman carry a narrative that Papoose himself refuses to publicly verify with his own mouth. Now let me get to the piece of this whole thing that I honestly think is going to define the next 6 months in the culture, and I need you to lock all the way in for this next part. Because there is an audio that has been floating around in certain trusted circles, an audio that people have been very careful about sharing publicly, an audio that allegedly captures Papoose in a private moment that no husband should ever be captured in on record. I am not going to describe the specific contents of that audio in graphic detail because I have not personally verified it, and I am not going to spread something I cannot personally stand on with my whole chest. But the fact that this audio exists at all, the fact that people who have heard it have all described it in similar terms across the board, the fact that its very existence is treated as an open secret in certain corners of the industry, tells you that there is significantly more to the Remy Ma and Papoose story than any of us have ever been shown on camera. Are you honestly asking me to believe that a man who claims to be the greatest MC of all time, a man who claims to be the last true savior of hip-hop, a man who has built his entire public persona on being fiercely loyal to his wife, has been walking around all these years without a single skeleton in his closet? Because I have been paying attention to this industry long enough to know that when a man puts on a performance that big, there is almost always a stage crew backstage that has seen the version he does not want anybody else to see. And in Papoose's specific case, that stage crew is starting to talk to the wrong microphones. Shay Cartier was not the first person to say what Shay Cartier said out loud. Shay Cartier was just the loudest one so far. Before Shay Cartier said anything, there were quieter voices. Before Shay Cartier posted anything, there were long private group chats where the real information got passed around. Before Shay Cartier put anything on record, there were bloggers who tiptoed around the edges of this exact story for years without ever quite putting the whole picture together on one page. And now, with Clarissa in the spotlight, with Topaz Stanton's name officially in the air, with Andre Durrell publicly calling Papoose a fraud on the record, with 50 Cent's fingerprints already permanently on the historical record of Remy Ma's release, the pieces are finally close enough together that anybody with two working eyes can see the shape of the picture forming. The shape of the picture is exactly this. Papoose is allegedly a man who used his own wife's incarceration as a business opportunity for personal gain. Papoose is allegedly a man who allowed his wife to sit in a cell while he quietly built his own name off her association. Papoose is allegedly a man who paid off multiple women to keep his private life private. Papoose is allegedly a man who could not even guarantee his own wife a job on paper for her own parole because he had no legitimate structure of his own to actually offer. And Papoose is allegedly a man who, right now, this very week we are living in, is using Clarissa's ongoing public embarrassment as a decoy so that the real story does not land in the wrong lap. That is the shape of the picture. That is what all the receipts are quietly pointing to. And that is exactly why the entire culture is holding its breath waiting for Remy Ma to finally speak her own truth. Now I want to say something directly to the women watching this video, because I know a lot of you have personally been in some version of this same story, even if the names in your version were never famous. A lot of you have been the cleanup crew for a man who did not deserve your loyalty. A lot of you have swallowed hard truths that sat in your throat like stones for years. A lot of you have watched a man you loved get celebrated for a whole life that you were quietly funding, quietly protecting, quietly bleeding for the whole time. And a lot of you have wondered, if your truth ever came out into the open, would anybody actually believe you? Would anybody stand next to you? Would anybody see you the same way you used to see yourself before he dimmed all your lights on purpose? Remy Ma, if you happen to be watching this video, and I know from the raw numbers on this channel that stranger things have absolutely happened, I want you to hear me clearly right now. Remy Ma, you do not owe Papoose another second of protection. Remy Ma, you do not owe Papoose another interview full of misdirection. Remy Ma, you do not owe Papoose another anniversary post for the algorithm. If the boulder is finally heavy, put the boulder down. The whole culture is ready to catch it for you. The whole culture is ready to catch you too. And to everybody else in this room tonight, before I let you go and let you sleep on all of this, I want to leave you with 3 specific questions to sit with, 3 real questions I want you to bring into the replies, 3 questions I am personally going to be reading every single one of your answers to. Number 1. Do you believe, based on everything you have heard so far, that Remy Ma went to prison because of something Papoose personally did? Number 2. Do you believe that the alleged hush money system is real, and do you think we will ever actually get the receipts on it in a way that holds up publicly in front of a camera? And number 3, the one I want you to really sit with tonight, if Remy Ma finally tells her full story in the upcoming Shaikika interview, do you think the industry will protect Papoose the same way it has always protected other men in his exact position, or do you think the culture has finally reached the point where the truth outweighs the brand? Because that third question right there is the one that keeps me up at night lately. That is the question that decides how this entire Papoose story ends. Not what Papoose says on his next podcast. Not what Clarissa posts to her next story. Not what the industry talking heads speculate on their next live stream. But whether the culture itself, meaning you, meaning me, meaning the people who click, the people who share, the people who comment, the people who show up on time when it matters, decides that this time, in this specific moment, we are not going to let a woman who took 6 years for a man walk quietly into the next chapter of her life while he gets to keep every last piece of his crown. Almost every single time in this industry, historically, the man wins in the end. Almost every single time, the woman gets rebranded as bitter, jealous, dramatic, or difficult. Almost every single time, the receipts get quietly buried under a brand new album drop, a brand new controversy, a brand new distraction, a brand new Clarissa. That is the pattern of the machine. That is how the machine has always worked in favor of certain men. But the machine has been glitching a lot lately. The machine has been letting certain truths slip through that it used to catch on the first try. The machine has been giving women like Remy Ma a slightly bigger microphone than the machine originally intended to hand out. And if the machine glitches just one more time, if just one more receipt drops in the right corner of the internet, if just one more insider decides they are finally done keeping the secret, then the story the industry has been quietly selling us for 2 full decades collapses in a single afternoon. I have been doing this job long enough now to know when a story is close to breaking wide open. This one is close. This one is closer than close. This Papoose story is honestly one single honest interview away from rewriting the entire mythology of one of hip-hop's most publicly performed marriages. And when that interview happens, when Remy Ma finally sits down and tells the truth on her own terms, I will be right here, sitting in this same exact chair, holding this same exact cup of tea, walking you through every single frame of it, line by line, receipt by receipt, silence by silence, until every last dot connects for every last person watching. So do me one small favor before you click off this video tonight. Boost this post so that the algorithm knows we are talking about something that actually matters. Drop a super thanks below if the spirit moves you and you want to keep supporting the exact kind of investigative pillow talk you cannot get anywhere else on this whole platform. Sound off underneath this one with your honest take, because I promise you I read every single reply and I am literally building the next episode based on where all your heads are at tonight. Subscribe if you have not already clicked that button, turn on your post notifications so that when the Shaikika interview finally drops and I go live with the full breakdown you are the very first ones in the room with me, and share this video with the one friend in your circle who has been trying to tell you Papoose was not who he said he was for years now, because tonight is finally the night that friend gets to say I told you so, and mean it. Meet me in the replies. Because the truth is coming. Papoose can already feel it in his bones. Clarissa is unknowingly providing the cover. Remy Ma is quietly holding the boulder. And the rest of us, Hush House family, we are the ones deciding tonight whether that boulder finally hits the ground with the full weight of the culture behind it, or whether Papoose gets one more full year of pretending he is somebody he never was. My money is on the boulder. My money is on Remy Ma. My money is on the truth finally winning one for the women who have been quietly carrying this culture on their backs for decades. Stay locked and tight, stay loud, keep your notifications on high, and I promise you I will see you in the very next one.